Good evening and welcome to the third in a series of forums with candidates for office for the November 7th elections that are being held here in Cayuga County. This forum is being held at Cayuga Community College in sponsorship with both the college and the Citizen, and is shown on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, as well as played on the college's radio station Win 89. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 7th, the voters in the 11th Legislative District for the Cayuga County Legislature will go to the polls. That district includes much of the northeast section of the city of Auburn. It is currently represented by Democrat Frank Reginelli, who has decided not to seek a second term in the legislature. In 2 weeks, voters will choose between Elaine Daly and Michael Lesch to represent them on the 6th floor of the county legislative building for at least the next 4 years. The position of a member of the county legislature is a part-time job that pays a base salary of $10,100. The 15-member legislature is split with 8 Democrats and 6 Republicans and 1 independent. With more than half of the legislature up this year and several competitive races, this could be a year that shifts control from the Democratic control, which they have had for the last 2 years, reverting to Republican control, which they had for several decades. Representing the press today is a familiar face to those who read The Citizen, Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen. He'll be asking the questions of our candidates. Prior to the taping of the show, the candidates flipped a coin to see who would speak first. We have both of them here. We'd like to welcome Elaine Daly, who's on the Democratic Working Families and Auburn Independence Party line, and Michael Lesch, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
We're delighted to have you here for the next 58 minutes, and we're going to start with opening statements, and we'll start with Ms. Daly.
Okay. My name is Elaine Daly, and as Guy said, I'm running for legislature in District 11 in the city of Auburn. I have been endorsed by the Democrats and Working Families parties. I am a lifelong resident of the county and have lived in District 11 for over 34 years. I retired 3 years ago after working 35 years as a healthcare professional in Cayuga County. I began as a public health nurse and ended as a director of health and human services. I currently work for East Hill Family Medical part-time, working closely with the schools, improving access to oral health services for children. So I would bring to the legislature a wealth of experience and knowledge of the county programs and services. From children's health to early intervention to long-term care. I know the community's needs. As a leader of a large county department, I also know the challenges of balancing those needs for service against the needs of the taxpayer. Aside from my work experience, I've contributed hundreds of volunteer hours, serving more than 10 years as a working board member for our local hospital. I also serve on the board of Unity House and Lifetime Care. Throughout this campaign, I have emphasized my experience because right now my background in community health is particularly relevant to the needs that are happening here. The condition of our lake and the impact of our drinking water is the #1 issue as I went door to door. The problem of opioid addiction and heroin use in our county has received heavy coverage in the media, and the need for increased local treatments is obvious. These are health needs. Additionally, the county is in the midst of assessing the organization of its organizational needs. As a longtime county employee, I would have working knowledge of our local government, how it operates, and be in a unique position to evaluate how recommended changes would impact delivery of services. Whether it's the conditions of our roads or the needs of our 50-year-old county office building, large ticket items call for long-range planning. I'm proud of my long service as a county employee. I believe the voters expect their representatives to work together for their interests. They expect community needs to be met, and they want services delivered as efficiently as possible. I believe I have the experience to contribute to that.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Michael Lesch, who's on the Republican and Conservative lines. Mr. Lesch, welcome.
I want to start out by thanking Jeremy at the Citizen and Guy for moderating at CCC. I think it's important for the voters to hear the issues from the candidates themselves before they go to the ballot box. As you know, my name is Michael Lesch. I'm a 4th-generation Cayuga County resident. I have deep roots in this county. I came back here after college due to my love for the area and my family residing here. I recently married my wife Mallory this year, and we hope to raise our family here one day. Over the past 12 years, I've worked in public accounting, becoming a certified public accountant, and eventually a partner at a local accounting firm. I have clients in a broad range of industries, including construction, manufacturing, agriculture, and professional services. I've gained their trust due to hard work, expertise, and honesty. Every day, I'm tasked with being a problem solver. My clients come to me with important issues that they are facing and opportunities that they are considering. I work with them to process all the information available to us. We collaborate to solve these complex problems and take advantage of any opportunities that we have. Whether it be public or private sector, decisions come down to allocating a finite amount of resources in order to return the maximum amount on your investment. I'm not a politician. I'm a private sector professional who will bring a new perspective to county government. We are faced with serious issues in the county. We need our tax dollars to spend efficiently and effectively. Our legislature needs pragmatic problem solvers. That's why I'm running for Cuyahoga County Legislature in District 11. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll be asked questions over the next 50 minutes by Mr. Boyer. He can ask them of either of you. If they're the same question for both of you, we'll flip back and forth. If you want to follow up, just give me the signal and we'll give you 1 minute for the follow-up. Mr. Boyer, welcome.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start off with a question that you both just kind of outlined your experience, and I think you've both tried to make the case of why that experience is the best fit. So I'd like you to critique, each other's background and why, basically explain why, because there's quite a contrast in two different people, one completely private sector, one in county government. So voters have a real stark choice in terms of the experience there. Why do you think you're the best choice to be a legislator based on that experience?
And this is for both?
Yeah.
Mr. Daly, you'll have 2 minutes on this.
Okay. In my mind, I think my experience in county government is invaluable in terms of looking at the delivery of service, because the county is public sector and the county's responsibility is to deliver services, largely some of them as administrative arm of the state, but largely to address the needs of our community. And I think it is different than the public sector, and having an intimate background in services, in how they're funded, in what their purpose is, I think is an asset, and I think that experience will make me be able to hit the ground running and to address some of the issues that the county's facing.
Mr. Lesch, private sector versus public sector.
I believe that I will come to the legislature with no biases, no preconceived notions regarding any aspect of county government. I agree that I don't have the experience with the process of county government as much as my opponent does, but when it comes down to businesses or public agencies running efficiently, that's where the aspect that I can help. I do that on a daily basis with my clients. I help their businesses to run more effectively, more efficiently, and deliver services in the best possible manner that they can. Sometimes I believe that county government can be bloated. I think by me being able to look at all the financials and me being able to study the county budget, I think that I can be a real asset to the current legislature.
All right, thank you. Ms. Daly, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
Again, I think, looking at the county budget and looking at the numbers and seeing if it balances, there's a huge difference between being able to look at that budget and to have an intimate understanding of what those numbers represent.
Anything follow up? Okay. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Well, we're sitting in an institution that is part of this district, District 11, Cuyahoga Community College, and I'd like to ask you a little bit about a couple issues related to the college and the legislature. One of them is, and it's been something that seems to come and go over the last few years, and that is on-campus housing. Should the college be pursuing some type of on-campus housing project? There's a few current legislators in the last few months have been saying that they believe they should do that. College president doesn't seem to be as energized about it. Over the years, we've had neighbors complain about possible projects coming, and some people saying they were really needed and some people saying they were a waste. So this may come up again in the next 4 years. As a legislator for that district, where do you stand on that topic of on-campus housing projects?
Mr. Lesch, you'll go first, 2 minutes.
I was at a legislature meeting recently, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, where the president of CCC spoke about it, and he didn't feel that at this time that on-campus housing was necessary for the students. And I think that's where I think I would defer to him and his expertise regarding the housing. So at this point, until it was proven otherwise, I would not feel that there's a need for additional student housing on campus.
Ms. Daly, you'll have 2 minutes.
I also was at the same meeting that he's referring to, and what I heard him say too was that they don't have the infrastructure of services here, whether it would be counseling or all the other things that would make student housing absolutely work. It wouldn't be, in his opinion, the time to do it, and I agree with Mike. I wouldn't. I would defer to his judgment on that.
Mr. Boyer.
In a separate matter related to the college president, this year they've changed procedures a little bit relating to the county legislature, and that the president, who used to report to the county government operations committee through the legislature, now just reports once a month to the full legislature. Some people on the board have felt like that's not enough accountability, that doesn't allow for discussion that they'd like to have at the committee level. Others have said that makes sense given the president's role as the leader of this large institution. Where do you stand on that idea? Should it revert back to the way it had been, or should we stay with just reporting to that full legislature?
Ms. Daly.
I believe reporting. I think that reporting to the full legislature seems to be adequate. You know, I don't know what the difference would be between doing that and reporting to government ops. I know there is talk about the college right now, whether it moves from the county sponsorship to something in a more regional way, where the county would lose a little more control over what's happening. But at this point, you know, I'm not close enough to know whether, you know, it's enough or it isn't. I wouldn't recommend a change at this point.
Mr. Lesch.
Without being a part of the current legislature, I don't know what the difference would be like for it to come through government ops or through a general legislature meeting. At this point in time, I would think it would be enough to hear from the president through a general legislature meeting, but that can be addressed as we go further into the next session of the legislature.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
Okay.
And we''t have the president here next month. We'll ask him these questions.
Yes, that'd be great. I appreciate you following up on that. That'd be good.
Try our best.
I was looking, we got, every month I get a spreadsheet from the treasurer, Jim Orman, and it has sales tax distribution data. And basically, what we're seeing here for the first 10 months in Cayuga County is a nice increase in sales tax for Cayuga County. At the same time, we're seeing a 2.2% decrease in sales tax for the city of Auburn. Based on the formula that's in place, the city preempts and gets out of they take what comes into the city basically as their share. So, you know, it may come up again as, you know, the city looks to balance its budget and the county looks to balance its budget and the towns look to balance their budget. Should we be open to reworking that formula? So that's my question. Should the county be open to changing the formula if city officials come and say we'd like to rework it?
I think we're starting with Mr. Lesch on this one for 2 minutes.
Well, it doesn't seem like it'd be in the interest of the county if the county seems to be winning this deal with it that it has with the city. So I would, as a legislator, obviously my interests were part of the city and the county legislature, but I would say that to negotiate the best deal for the county as possible while considering the city, and that's the way it seems like it's working out for the county currently.
Ms. Daly, on the issue of sales tax?
I don't think I could disagree. At this point, the county gets 50% of all the sales tax that comes in, and then spreads to the city what has been levied in the city of Auburn.
Well, the city basically, under preemption, takes what is actually the transactions that actually happen within the city go to the city. So in years when business is booming in the city, they may see an increase, but in other years when maybe more business is happening outside, they can be on the losing end of that. So
I guess I'm shocked with the increase in downtown that the city wouldn't be doing. That would just my own opinion. I'm surprised that the city would not be making out better
with
than
the
they
restaurants,
are.
and yeah, that is surprising.
Well, one thing this kind of leads to a bigger philosophical question, that is, you know, as a representative of a portion of the city of Auburn, you know, how do you balance that, you know, looking out for the city of Auburn and those residents in your district versus the total picture, Cayuga County? Sometimes those things can clash. So where do you stand on that Where are your allegiances first?
My allegiances first should probably be to the residents of District 11 who are going to be making the decision about which one of us will be their next representative. Again, I don't know, I'm not that familiar. Is this something the city would bring forward to the county and make their case and ask the county to change the preemption, or that the city would advocate in one way or the other?
Right, it's happened off and on over the years, as whether it be open for discussion. It can't happen without two sides agreeing.
Right.
So,
Mr. Lesch? I
think my first responsibility would be to the county residents as a whole, and then my District 11 residents. I think I have to make, when making decisions, when negotiating on deals, I think I have to act in the best interest of the county as the county legislator. So that's where I would negotiate from in any decision that I was a part of.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right. People that read our website, auburnpub.com, already know this because it was on our website today, but the governor has signed the legislation that allows the county now to potentially sell or enter into a contract with the hospital for the county nursing home building. That's been mentioned as a possible project that the hospital might like to do. So now that the state has kind of cleared that hurdle and made it possible, where do you stand on whether that's something that the county should and the hospital should move forward on as a project?
Okay. Mr. Lesch.
Well, the hospital is one of our biggest employers in the county. We, if not the biggest, I was just looking at the Sita website and saw that today. So it's so important that we support the hospital in any way possible, because our community depends on it, and it thrives because of the hospital, because of all the jobs that are there. So I think the hospital being able to provide more services and purchasing the nursing home or leasing the nursing home. I didn't read the article.
I think that's to be determined.
Be determined, but being able to utilize will be a great asset for the hospital, and then they can allocate the space that they were using for doctors that are available to bring them closer to the hospital.
Ms. Daly, on this issue of county nursing home and the hospital.
If I could just get some clarification on the question. You said that they had recently allowed...
The governor, essentially the state needed to pass home rule legislation to allow the county to sell that, to basically allow such a transaction to go forward.
Right.
Without the state doing what it did, it wouldn't be able to happen. That happened today. The governor signed the bill. So now it's kind of all in the court of the home officials. And so, the question becomes, is this something we need to move forward on, or is it something we need to, maybe tap the brakes on? What are your thoughts on it as a project?
I think there has been some preliminary discussion about working with the hospital to take over in whatever terms, whether it's a lease or a purchase or whatever, the space there. And I would support that being done. The building is sitting there empty. I think this has some potential to, have a good impact for our community. And if they could figure out a way to work that out and have it be in both of their parties' best interest, I think they should.
Anything to follow up?
All righty.
Mr. Boyer.
We'll now get into the water, basically the Wasco Lake issues that have been around, especially the last 2 summers with blue-green algae and affecting the public drinking water. I'd like to sort of do it in 2 parts. The first part being, and so I think each of these questions could be two-minute type questions, but the first part would be evaluate what's been done so far to address this problem, as far as what do you think has been good, smart, forward action that we've taken, but also have there been any things done or not done that you would like to have seen happen. The second part will be, where do we go from here? What needs to happen as we go forward to make sure we continue to address things the right way?
So let's deal with evaluating the process so far, and then we'll come back. We'll start with Ms. Daly. You're up first on the evaluation issue.
I think, and everyone would agree, the whole issue with the blue-green algae and the toxins being found in the treated water was a huge wake-up call. Whether there should have been more attempted in the past. I know the health department worked on the point source at Groton to get the phosphorus levels down on that. But there has been a steady decline in the body of waters. But I think the catalyst to move all this to action as quickly as possible was the issue with the drinking water. I think there has been a lot of efforts that have been taken now, and the whole thing is predicated on reducing the nutrients and the sediment getting into a Wasco Lake. And I think the approach has to be on all fronts, and they're all non-point source issues in my opinion. And the goal is to work with agriculture while we're working on all the other issues. I think it takes a partnership with the city, the county, the state, the community to move this all forward. There's been a significant amount of work done with the Water Quality Management Agency. They're looking at manure best management practices. They're going to be soon approving ditch erosion strategies. I probably agree that the towns and the villages are going to need the county's support to move that forward. The Wasco Lake Watershed Management Council, they're moving towards closer supervision of the Watershed Inspector Program. And I think the health and planning, the rules and regs of the watershed, there is a lot of issues going on here, but certainly I think, you know, it's not over, and, you know, we need to continue to advocate with the state and to move this forward.
Okay, Mr. Lesch, on this issue of evaluating the good and the bad.
Well, outside of our people in Cayuga County, I think our natural water is our greatest resource. We need to do whatever we can to protect our drinking water, and thankfully, I think everybody has that goal in mind. And there's a lot of different groups. It's tough to pay attention to, even studying for this debate and going to legislature meetings, understanding, you know, all the different agencies that have interplay. But everybody getting on the same page, and for us to be able to provide a direct message to our county residents on exactly what's happening, whether it be a 9-element plan from a Wasco Lake Watershed Management Council, or the TMDL study from Save Wasco Now. We need to be able to relay this information to our constituents so they can see milestones that we've set, and that, you know, things are changing. I was at a Wasco Lake Watershed Management Council meeting about a week ago, and they talked about the strategies for ditches and runoff, and we at New York State had already given a grant, so all our portion was the manpower regarding these towns, and that, you know, reduce erosion and, you know, decrease nutrients flowing through these ditches. That's something that we can do now. I like actionable ideas. I was speaking to someone else, and they told me about potentially putting retention ponds for the Van Ness Brook and Sucker Brook, and they create natural filtration. Any ideas that we can start now and move forward, so we can report to our people that this is what we're doing, and these are the goals. This is what we've accomplished so far. And then it's about lobbying the state and the federal government to provide us with resources on more big picture ideas. But again, the good thing is there's a lot of smart people that care about our lake, and, you know, I think just forming a direct and clear message is very important.
I think you got both.
Yeah, you did a nice job of incorporating that. You know, as a follow-up for both of you, you know, agriculture is certainly a huge aspect of the watershed, and discussing whether there need to be changes with regard to rules and regulations as well as enforcement. And my question for both is basically, you know, do we need to have more rules and regulations, or more stringent rules and regulations on farming in our watershed? And B, do we need to do a better job enforcing what we have in the watershed?
Okay. We'll start with Mr. Lesch first.
The lake is so important. Fresh water is so important. I'm not usually a person who likes to put rules and regulations on businesses, but this is a serious issue, and we need to bring farmers and anyone who has to deal with runoff to the table, and, you know, seek their cooperation. And then, you know, if enforcement needs to be pursued, that's what we have to do. The lake is that important, and our drinking water is that important.
Okay, Ms. Daly, on this issue of agriculture.
I absolutely think we do have to bring, through the work of the state, more stringent rules around agriculture. We don't have, and I think we talked about this when we met, the county doesn't have the regulatory authority to take care of everything that's happened in the watershed. Even the issues with the large dairy farmers, and they have the CAFOs that are permitted by DEC, and they do a lot of best management practices, primarily around manure management. But the voluntary management, or the best management practices we're seeing in the paper, the hedgerows, the storm ditch, those are all voluntary, and they're not required to do those. Small farms in our watershed have no regulation, and there are a number of small farms in the watershed, and they all need to institute best management practices. They're probably going to need state funding to help them do that, but I think it has to happen.
You have 1 minute.
I was reading about the Soil and Water Conservation District, and I noticed what Elaine said, that they can help farmers who and farms seek best management practices, but it's not something that they can enforce them to do. You would hope that anyone who has anything to do with the runoff would utilize a resource like the Soil and Water Conservation District. I was blown away just by reading through the website and all the services that they offer.
Okay. You have 1 minute as well.
I actually did take the conservation bus tour, and there was representatives from DEC on that bus tour, and we looked at all of the projects that the Soil and Water Conservation District was on, and to kind of put a pat for the county, we're funding our Cayuga County Soil and Water District far better than any of our contiguous counties. We have more resources, we have more staff, we have more machinery, and I think that is a commitment to the county is making to to keep moving these things forward.
Okay. We'll move on. Mr. Boyer.
You did mention, I forget which one of you mentioned, that there has been there is an ongoing process to possibly transfer the Wasco Watershed Inspection Program, which it currently is under the auspices of Cayuga County Soil and Water, to the Wasco Watershed Management Council.
Yes.
Trying to keep all our organizations straight in my head, but and there's been resistance to that from the Soil and Water District, who feel like it's working well under their umbrella. Others feel like there needs to be more accountability directly to a Wasco watershed. So where do you stand on that transfer? Ultimately, the legislature, I think, and the city council and the Soil and Water District are going to have to decide on whether they support this or not.
Ms. Daly, you go first.
When this was, I just had, I was speaking with someone from the local health department, and I believe there is a letter that has been drafted that is from the Soil and Water saying that they are in full support of this transfer now. So I think that's really good news. But my thought was that this was always the plan, to move them to a not-for-profit, to have the funders of the watershed inspection program actually oversee them more closely. And I think personally it takes the public perception that Soil and Water is a little biased toward agriculture. It will take that out of the mix. So I was always in support of it, and I understand now, so are they.
Okay. Mr. Lesch?
I agree. I think the inspectors should be under the Wasco Lake Watershed Management Council. This would enable them to be independent in both fact and appearance, and I just think that's what will work best for our county.
Okay. Just a programming note, we are in the middle of just about halfway through our 11th Legislative District Forum here at Cayuga Community College that is sponsored by the college and the Citizen. Asking questions are Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of the Citizen, and we have both of the candidates who are running the 11th district, which covers the northeast side of the city of Auburn. They are Elaine Daly, who is on the Democratic Working Families Party and an Independence line as well as Michael Lesch, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Wanted to ask you about control of the legislature. That is something that hangs in the balance again in this election. It was in the balance the last election, and the Democrats managed to swing that from Republican control to Democratic control. Want to use a Republican, want to use a Democrat. So I guess an overarching question is, how important is party control of the legislature, is control of the legislature to the future of Cayuga County?
Mr. Lesch, you go first.
I don't think that Republicans have a monopoly on good ideas or Democrats have a monopoly on good ideas. When I get into the legislature, the only thing that I'm concerned about is people are making decisions in the best interest of the county. I can work with anyone that is willing to become informed and to be thoughtful and thorough in making their decisions. So whether it be Democratic control or Republican control, if someone's willing to work hard and make decisions that are in the best interest of county residents, I can work with them.
Okay, Ms. Daly?
I mean, basically, you know, who's ever in control of the legislature, in my opinion, from my experience, seems to have a lot less frustration than the other side. But I think people, to Mike's point, people are sick of this. I think people need to be, I would advocate that you have a legislature, irregardless of political party, who actually meets together, sets some goals for the year, puts their vision on paper and moves forward, and then actually measures their progress to that, instead of having it be, you know, this party, work as a group and commit to doing something and get it done.
Okay. We'll move on to Mr. Boyer.
Okay. One of the, under Democratic control, we've had Chairman Keith Batman basically running the legislature the past 2 years. I don't know if he wants it, but you know, he could try to do that again for next year, or there could be others that step up. I'd like you to both critique, first of all, Chairman Batman's leadership for the legislature, and then tell us who you think you might support if you were to win this election and get sworn in January.
Okay, Ms. Daly.
From what I've seen and how things have progressed, I think Keith has worked very hard, along with a number of other people, to move some of the things that we're seeing forward. I think there was a huge commitment on keeping a balanced budget, not exceeding the tax cap. I think he and others drove the CGR organizational assessment as something needed to see if we can make organizational and efficiency changes in government. And I think there has been a lot of work based on him and others to look at finally putting together a capital reserve to deal with infrastructure issues. So from what I see, he has done quite a bit of work and spent a lot of time doing it. If I'm elected, and I'm not elected yet, would I support him? I don't know if he's running. I don't know what I would do. I think it's premature. What I would hope I would do would be to see what the options are and then make the best decision for the district.
Mr. Lesch.
I learned a long time ago to not pass judgment on someone I don't know personally. So I don't know Chairman Batman personally. I would give him an opportunity if that's what he was, if he wanted to pursue the chair again, and anyone else who wanted to pursue the chair. I'd like to listen to their vision for the county legislature, their vision for the county, and give everybody an opportunity to receive my vote.
Okay.
I guess, you know, to flip it around as far as what will you look for then in January if you're on the ledge? What qualities do you want to see in a chairman as far as leadership style, as well as any policy issues that you want to make sure you hear about?
Okay, we'll go with Mr. Lesch. It's your turn for 2 minutes.
I want to see someone that's open-minded, who's willing to be inclusive, bring everybody to the table. I want someone who is willing to work across the aisle. This isn't a national election. We're you know, trying to solve problems for local county residents. We need someone who has the best interests and who's willing to work with everybody who has a seat at the table. That would be my concern and my prerequisite to, you know, voting on a chair.
Ms. Daly,
Again,
qualities?
Yeah, you know, having someone who is willing to be open in communication, to try to build consensus, I think, you know, those are very important characteristics. Someone who has the time to devote to the job, and you know, I think someone that builds a team.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
Another important position is the county manager, and I understand we're getting closer and closer to having a new one hired here in Cayuga County, but in the meantime we've been without one for this year, and we've had, I think, 4 in the last 8 to 10 years. So there's been some stability issues with the county I say county manager, I guess the technical title is county administrator, but the person running day-to-day operations. What do you think needs to change, with this new hire that we're going to make? What needs to change in terms of how this position works in order for it to be more effective?
County Administrator, Ms. Daly.
Basically, I'm in full support of, hiring a county administrator as soon as possible. What I think happens is, for decades, the county has had a very strong committee form of government, and I think it's really hard for them to, at times, to give up control. And to have an effective administrator, there needs to be some form of giving up control. They have spent a significant amount of time redoing the job description. They actually have grids of what, whose role is what. But it really comes down to the behaviors of the department heads and the legislature itself, and the ability to keep the manager in the loop, to give them some authority and support their judgment when they go, and to make sure that no one is working around that position. And I think if that happens, in addition to giving feedback on job performance, I think things will stabilize out.
Mr. Lesch, what would you like to see changed in the county administrator, if anything?
I understand that the legislature has reduced the amount of department heads that are reporting to the county administrator, so that'll be helpful. But what needs to happen is we need to empower the county administrator, especially after the last 8 months of not having a county administrator. We have department heads that are used to going directly to legislature. And so for this new person that's going to be coming in, we can't allow anyone to circumvent the county administrator. They need to be empowered. The legislators can't undermine the county administrator. They need to create legislation and allow the administrator to administer that legislation through the department heads. I think it just comes down to giving them an opportunity to succeed and not undermining the position.
Thank you, Mr. Lesch. Mr. Boyer.
In terms of interacting with county government employees, how would you deal with issues that come up, that are brought to you by constituents related to something in county government? So let's say, a resident comes to you and says they're having a problem with, the county social services department or something like that. How are you going to respond to that concern in terms of who you communicate with about it and how you go about following up on trying to help this person with the problem?
Mr. Lesch, you go with this question first.
I would report the problem of my constituent or county resident to the county administrator, and then ask for a time, hey, when do you think that you can get back to me so I can follow up with my county resident or my constituent to let them know that this is being dealt with or this issue's been resolved. So I think it goes directly through the county administrator, and then they channel it to the department that it needs to from there.
Ms. Daly?
If I took the information myself, I would probably come in. I would ask to meet with the county administrator, bring the department head in if that need be, but not do it in isolation, and then bring forward the concerns that I had. Both parties would be there. They would both be getting this information, and then I would let the administrator take it from there.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay. One of the issues that we're dealing with in this community is opioid abuse, and a couple issues have come up in the legislature recently. One is a potential lawsuit that is like a class action type lawsuit, and Cayuga County is considering whether to be a party to some of that. Not necessarily spending money on lawyers, but providing support in terms of in-kind research and information, and also just being a party to a lawsuit. There's been some division in the legislature about that. So my question for both of you is, where do you stand on that in terms of joining a lawsuit against pharmaceutical companies that prescribe opioids or that make opioid-derived medications?
Ms. Daly.
I'm aware that there's been discussion about the possibility of the county joining this lawsuit. At this point in time, I think the county's doing their appropriate job and due diligence to try to get additional information to see whether it makes sense for them to join this lawsuit or not. I know there's only 8 counties that are currently in, or the last I heard there was 8. I'd want to know if there were other counties that were asked to join and had said no, and who those might be. I'm getting information, whether it's true or not, that these are individual specific lawsuits, that they would be based on individuals. I think the county has I think the county's right they went into executive session on this to discuss this further, so I'm not privy to that. And until I had more information, I don't think I could make a decision whether I think it's a good idea or it isn't.
Okay. Mr. Lesch, on this issue of the lawsuits and opioid addiction.
Well, first off, the opioid epidemic is devastating to so many families in Cayuga County. I don't think there's a family that, that isn't either directly affected or affected very closely, mine included. We need to, as a legislator, we need to do anything that we can to help reduce this problem in our county, whether that be funding the Finger Lakes Drug Task Force, anything. But regarding the lawsuit, from my understanding, we won't have any upfront expense. The only thing that would be paid out is a percentage of any proceeds regarding the lawsuit. Was that correct? I think that's what I heard on the last debate. I think I would be in favor of being a part of this class action lawsuit. I think it'd be the best interest in our county. I think we had a large settlement from a tobacco company several years ago, I've heard. So I don't think there'd be any harm in us being a part of this class action lawsuit.
And the only thing I had heard is this is going to be in no way representative of the amount of money that came in from the tobacco class action lawsuit. So again, until I had more information about what would be asked of the county in terms of getting this data, I'm not sure I would support it.
Anything to add?
Obviously, more information required, and what we would need to be providing the attorneys who would be representing us in this class action lawsuit would definitely be a important issue to figure out the amount of manpower hours that it would take to produce the information. That would be a consideration as to whether we would get, or I would vote to be a participant in this class action lawsuit.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
What else, beyond lawsuits, what else can and should the legislature do to help fight this problem?
Okay. And Mr. Lesch, it's your turn.
It's tough as the legislator. What we can do is lobby our state and federal representatives. I think in talking to some doctors, some of the prescribing practices when it comes to opioids, being prescribed 30 to 60, 60 to 120, sometimes is overkill for routine surgeries. I read a statistic where 75% of heroin users started out on prescription drugs. That's something that needs to be stopped. We need to limit the amount of drugs that are out there, and I don't think that's a county legislator issue, but we can help to lobby our state and federal representatives to change some of these, to stand up to pharmaceutical companies. What we can do is we can fund law enforcement, allow them to be proactive as opposed to reactive. Fund the Finger Lakes Drug Task Force, get the city police, the sheriff, the state police, all working together. I mean, this is serious issues. We need to, they need to be able to get the sources and be proactive, like I said.
Daly, on the issue of what the legislature can do beyond the lawsuit.
Whether it's the individual legislature or it's the legislature overseeing the programs that the county provides, there's a lot of work going on within law enforcement, with the jail, with county mental health, through the Community Services Board, all looking to address this issue. And I think we do have to address it on all fronts. but and law enforcement is very important, but I don't think we can arrest our way out of this problem. I think there is a huge amount. The county has been seen as a high needs community because of their overdose death rates and that number of people that are leaving this county to get services. And I think there's been a lot of local planning and a lot of state and federal money because of that coming in here. And I think it's really about the delivery of services and making sure we have resources in this community to address this. Addiction is the biggest form of, and the most aggressive form of substance use disorder, and people need access to service when they present. And I think that's a huge strategy and that's being taken care of.
Okay, we'll move on. Mr. Boyer.
Okay, Cayuga County's office building is wearing down and needs a lot of work, we're told. So there's some discussion about what the best path forward would be, whether that's to renovate the existing structure, which it would involve dealing with quite a bit of asbestos among other issues in that building, or to look to see if we could build a new building somewhere else. For both of you, what path are you have an inclination to support, and what are the important issues you want to see as far as what we need to have in a county office building?
Ms. Daly, you worked there for a couple of years.
Yes, I did work there for a few years. I think there has been a lot of discussion about the county office building. I guess I was at the meeting when the original resolution for the $4,000 was put up. I think it was a feasibility study to see if we could build on our own property. And from there has come this idea that the county has, is next to pulling the trigger on either building a new building or renovating the other one. I think these are all discussions, and at some point, is the county office building and the facilities going to have to be addressed? Yes. Is that tomorrow? I don't think so. And I think a lot more work has to be done to evaluate that before it makes sense either way to refurbish the building we're in or to look to building new. So I think it's getting a lot of discussion, but I don't think it's imminent.
Mr. Lesch, what should we do with the county office building?
I would never rule out anything regarding renovating or building a new building until I had all of the information. And by that I mean I want to identify the problems with our current building, see if there are ways to fix those current building, if we do have the ability to renovate it and it could work out as our county office building, and if for some reason it can't, then explore estimates of a new county office building or a relocation. I would be inclined to renovate the current office building from the quotes that I've heard previously. I just don't think it would be appropriate to pay for a new county office building that benefits a few on the backs of our county residents when our county median household income is just over $50,000. So to push additional capital expenditures such as this one as a new building would be hard for me to swallow. But again, I would want to identify the problems first with the current building, and then take a look at exactly how much it's going to cost to renovate and how much it would cost to build a new building. So I wouldn't rule out anything, but it would be hard for me to vote for funding a new office building.
Mr. Boyer.
We're talking about shared resources or consolidation, those kinds of words a lot lately. Part of it is because the governor and the legislature got a measure in this year that says counties have to come up with a plan. So ours is going to come due next year. From your perspective, what you know about what's out there as opportunities to share services and save some money, give us one or two ideas that you think should be a focus of that plan.
Mr. Lesch, I believe you're up first.
I would go into being a legislator with eyes wide open. There are no sacred departments, sacred entities inside of county government. I would want to look at each one. Two areas where I think that we could share services would be to centralize the assessor's office, make it a countywide office. It would bring consistency to the assessment of properties. Also, look at the highway department. I think we have 23 towns, 9 villages, and we have a city highway department, county highway department. I think there has to be ways that we can share services, reduce costs, and this doesn't have to mean employees. You know, everyone, you know, no one wants to work together anymore when they think their job's online, and I understand that. We can take employees off of, you know, off of the table, but there has to be ways that we can work together in the highway department to share the taxpayers' money.
Ms. Daly, on this issue of the governor's proposal, or not proposal, requirement.
Right. I'm aware that the shared services plan has been deferred till August of 2018, and I think even though it was deferred, there were probably, I think there was a survey, there were 3 meetings held, and there were a list of opportunities that I think will be the foundation for when they reconvene. Shared countywide assessment, countywide court enforcement, sharing equipment, roads, plowing, all of those things would be things that would be brought to the table. Then the bigger items, obviously, that were on the table, you know, law enforcement consolidation, the Q account, or the single sewer and water authority. Those are bigger items, but I think purposely the whole issue with the shared services plan is really about changing a mindset. It's about putting people in a room. It's about making them look at what it costs to deliver services, and it's about having it in their face about where there's duplication. And you know, I'm hoping this effort will lead to something and actually be the secret of being able to keep some of the services that we have.
Mr. Lesch.
I was at the CGR consulting group preliminary meeting, and they're looking at our county government as a whole from the top down, and I think we're supposed to have some results starting in November, but a final report in January and February. And I think that's going to be really interesting for the next legislature to take a look at, to see where we can become more efficient for our tax base.
Okay, Mr. Boyer, you're going to maybe get 2 questions. One can be a regular question. We might have to go short on the next one.
Short and long, okay. I don't know whether this is short and long, but I would like to get your opinion on the county spending $350,000 to fund the Cayuga Economic Development Agency, basically the job creation tool that was created a few years ago to try to be a one-stop source for people looking to do business or, you know, build their existing business here in the county. Are we? Has that been a smart investment, and should we continue investing in that entity, Sita?
Okay, Ms. Daly, you're going to have 2 minutes on this.
The Cayuga Strategic Solutions was the joint venture between Sita and the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, like CSS oversees Sita and the Chamber,
Right.
and Sita contracts with the county to
Right.
provide the
to
support
be the one,
service.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm aware that the county gives $350,000 to Sita. They had a 3-year contract. I think they just renewed again. I don't know the return on investment of that, but I think any investment in economic development, I think, is it makes sense. I think the county has a role themselves in economic development, but I think this is a measure that puts county funds into the development of business here, and I think that's important, and I would have supported that investment as well.
Mr. Lesch, on the $350,000 commitment to Sita.
I'm in favor of funding Sita and reviewing annually. New York State's a difficult place to do business. You see that, you know, in every single survey that comes out. New York State is not the most business-friendly environment. We need something in our county to draw people in. And the great thing about Sita is it helps small businesses with business plans, with pro forma financial statements, to as far as large businesses. So I'm definitely in favor of Sita. I think the businesses should have a place to go for support and resources, and I think they've done a good job. I was on their website today, and I saw all the places that they've worked on in the last few years. Sidec, the milk plant, Aurora Shoe Company. There's just several businesses that they've done a good job, and then having that available to any new businesses is a great resource.
Okay. Well, I thank you both for answering Mr. Boyer's questions. Mr. Boyer, thank you for your time. We're now going to turn to closing statements. You each get 2 minutes, and as we said, we're going to go in reverse order of what you did on opening statements. So Michael Lesch, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines for the 11th Legislative District in the City of Auburn. Mr. Lesch.
I want to start out by thanking Jeremy, Guy, CCC again, and also thanking Elaine. I mean, we both know it takes a lot to put yourself out here, and you know you should be proud. I think the candidate or the constituents of District 11 have two candidates with distinct differences. You know, I bring something that's slightly different. I'm from the private sector. I'm going to look at things in a numbers way, and along with with my constituents in mind. I'm not a politician. I never really planned to be. But what I do is I have a vested interest in this county, and I want to see it be great. I want to deal with the issues of the lake. I want to deal with issues of a declining population, to see whatever county government can do to make this county as great to grow up in for my kids as it was for me. And I hope that the voters turn out on November 7th and they get a chance to make an informed decision. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Elaine Daly, who is on the Democratic Working Families Party and an Auburn Independence line. Ms. Daly.
Again, I also thank you, my manners. As we near the close of the campaign, I can tell you, as Mike would say, I have a new respect for anyone who's run for public office. It's a huge amount of work, and it's not easy to put yourself out there. I want to thank the voters in District 11 for the courtesies they have shown me when I visited them over the past several weeks. At a forum a couple weeks ago, we were asked how our backgrounds would qualify us to serve. Mike answered he is an accountant, he's from the private sector, he would come with no preconceived notions or bias. Well, the legislature is the public sector. I also come with no preconceived notion or bias. I come with a perspective, a point of view, fashioned by more than 35 years of public service, an understanding of the role of county government and the service it provides. I hope the voters in District 11 will recognize that this experience gives me a strong foundation to address the challenges ahead. I believe in public service. I'll work hard to be the voice as your county legislator, and I'd be honored to serve again the people of Cayuga County. I hope you vote November 7th.
Thank you both, and we would also like to echo what you both said. It is not easy putting yourselves out there, but we're glad that you're doing it. So we wish you well in the last 2 weeks of the campaign. We'd also thank Mr. Boyer for his questions. He and I will be back on Thursday for the 13th Legislative District, which faces off incumbent Timothy C. Lattimore, who is seeking a third term to the legislature, and Robert Nadzo. We hope you'll stick around for just a few minutes. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back to a special edition of Beyond the Front Page, where we'll be talking about Kate Clifford Larson's book, Bound for the Promised Land, which is part of the Cayuga Reads program. We'll have she and Lisa Carr of the Seymour Library, as well as Jeff Ludwig, the education coordinator for the Stewart House. After we get done with the Thursday's 13th district, we finish off with our final forum on Tuesday, Halloween, on the 31st, where we'll have the candidates for the Auburn City Council. We have all four of them agreeing to be here. We have the incumbents Debbie McCormick and Terry Cuddy, as well as their challengers John Camardo and Adam Miller. We'll return to our regular programming after Election Day. We're going to take a week break off. We'll have several shows that will feature guests including John DeFrancisco, a New York State Senator who is possibly running for governor, Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Perizzola, and Business Manager Lisa Green to talk about foundation aid, as well as an update from this college's president, as we mentioned about 40 minutes ago, Brian Durant. And we'll also have shows that focus on Hospice of the Finger Lakes as it turns 30, as well as an update on the Shines Theater. Because of the number of forums that we have this year, the Citizen puts these forums immediately up on their website at auburnpub.com, so you can download them there, or you can look at the college's YouTube station. They are on there. The Auburn Regional Media Access Armor will run these forums for the rest of the month, and then we will see you back here in just a few minutes with Beyond the Front Page. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We want to thank you for watching, and we hope you'll stick around.